Welcome to the Flower Essence Podcast, and join us on an exploration of the healing wisdom of flowers.
With combined decades of experience in the study and practice of flower essence therapy, I, Kathleen Aspens, and co-host Rokana Feld guide you to reconnect to nature with these potent vibrational remedies.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Aspens, and Rokana and I today are going to be talking about getting ready for the holidays. Thanksgiving is near on us, and a lot of us are going to be traveling and spending some time with our families, and we thought that we'd bring up some of the topics that are likely to come up when we spend time with our families. There's oftentimes an awful lot of history going on there and a lot of button pushing, and we can fall back into patterns. Thank goodness we have flower essences to help us with these things because, boy, families, they're a bit fraught, aren't they, Ro?
Absolutely. We get to get all our buttons pushed and be on the spot for being on our best behavior at the same time, right?
Exactly. Yeah, the button pushing thing is so funny because it's always so amazing how, especially if we don't spend a lot of time with our family on a regular basis, we can forget how we revert back to these old patterns of being, and all of a sudden it's been ages since that particular button got pushed, and hello, there it goes again. And it's just kind of amusing because, well, our family, they did install those buttons after all.
Yeah, it catches, I don't know, me by surprise sometimes. It's so funny. We think those of us on the self-help and self-healing paths, we've done a lot of work a lot of times in this area, especially if we've been working with trauma and healing the past. And, it surprises me sometimes how easy it is to get triggered and right back into childhood when in certain circumstances, especially during the holidays.
No kidding. There's nothing like all of a sudden being tossed in with your family or extended family or close nuclear family, and all of a sudden you start acting like a kid again. What is up with that?
Yeah, and especially with siblings. I mean, I'm the oldest of 6, and we have quite large family gatherings, and it's great. We have great relationships, but the old patterns easily come into play as well.
It sure is a chance to check in with your growth and to sort of see places that maybe you've missed and start to recognize, oh, there it is. Look at me doing that again.
Yeah, it's great. It is a good way to kind of step back and observe yourself if you can. And you just really can see how these things evolved in our psyches when you step back and you're able to have that perspective. But how do we maintain and how do we get there? How do we get to that, having that perspective? If we're ourselves stressed from the holidays, getting together, making it happen during a busy time. And a lot of times there's all sorts of hoops we have to jump through to get those family gatherings together. And there's so much work to do. If it's getting together for Thanksgiving or something where there's a lot of food to cook and, there's a lot to plan. And so and then we have the season getting colder, and maybe our immune system isn't up to par. So there's a lot of things that hit us during the winter season and when the holidays start to happen. And tensions are definitely high if we're at jobs and working that we're trying to get deadlines done in order to go on vacation. It's all coming together. It's very stressful. And then we're put into the dinner table situation or whatever the gathering is with all of our family. And it's some of us may not have the same views, political, religious, about and we're dealing with food, and there might be disagreements about food beliefs. That happens in my family. And so it gets interesting. And flower essences are some of the things that I know you and I both turn to deal with with these scenarios. So what are some of the things that you like to work with?
Oh my gosh. Yes, you've brought up so many topics like, oh yes, and that one too. I think that one of the first things to think about whenever you're traveling or whenever you're kind of out of your routine, definitely keep some sort of a rescue crisis formula on hand. Keep it handy because, like we're saying, nothing brings out, your not your best self as exhaustion and travel and being compressed into a little tube or driving for long distances and then getting a lot of work or something like that in order to get ready for everything. So having a bottle of rescue remedy, having soul support, I think it's really useful. Any of the rescue kind of crisis formulas are really worthwhile to have handy. And then we can get into some of the things that are maybe more specific. There's that saying about, all happy families are the same and all dysfunctional families are different in different ways. So it's sort of hard to say, okay, this is the flower essence for challenging family stuff because everyone has something different. However, holly is always a good starting point. That's one of the first ones I think of anytime you're having to interact with other people. Because holly helps you connect to your heart and to the love you have for somebody else past the frustration that you might have on maybe the more personality level. So you can recognize, okay, I really love this person, even if their political views might not be mine, or whatever conflicts we may have, we can still connect to sort of a higher sense of love of this person is important to me in some way, and I'm going to try to find a bridging ground. Holly is also really great for the sibling rivalry that will pop up, sometimes around attention or this parent or this sibling is spending more time with this person and I'm feeling left out. Holly, it's a polycrest remedy, meaning it has a broad range of uses. So I think holly is a good starting point.
I like that a lot. And I was just thinking how interesting it is that holly is used for decorations, for holiday decorations.
It came in the house for a reason, and it's helping. Yeah. And pine, we could talk about pine too, because that's clearly another holiday-centric item.
Right. The pine trees and pine boughs on the mantle places, and pine, really helping those feelings of, guilt or not feeling good enough. And then also just the support. I mean, I look at the pine tree as a tree that offers so much to humanity. I mean, we build our, structures with it, houses and all sorts of things with the wood. And the needles are full of vitamin C for our immunity. You can make pine needle tea. You can just, any time of the year, it's an evergreen. And so it has that real strengthening aspect, I think, and that feeling of being supported. I like to look at it that way, along with the more traditional, Bach ways of using it. But that I love the support that I feel from it when I'm outside working with that tree.
And I would just throw a safety note in there. Don't use the trees that are maybe Christmas trees. They might have been sprayed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm talking about definitely in the wild.
Yes. Just, throwing it out there just in case somebody thought, well, I'll try this.
Yeah.
But please do. But just be sure to know that your tree has not been sprayed.
Yeah. And it's so high in vitamin C that it actually will make your mouth pucker. And it kind of it's a little too intense for me personally. It can make my throat a little scratchy, but a lot of people do like it for getting that bite. It's a survival, tea if you're out stuck in the woods or something.
Interesting. I didn't know about that aspect of pine. Pine is one of the essences that absolutely was one of my very first explorations into flower essences. It made such an impact in my life. I was just full of feelings of guilt and self-loathing from experiences from childhood, being told I wasn't, there was something wrong with me, and, the inherent aspects of being female in a male dominated culture. And taking Pine just absolutely, it completely changed my life. It completely took away all of these horrible feelings, like I was just broken and damaged and worthless. And Pine just, when I worked with it very intensively as a single essence for a period of a couple months, and it just absolutely shifted that whole issue. So many women, and I think so many of us, as we come into holidays, we start to re-engage in some of these really old issues. And shame is such a huge issue. A lot of us were raised with shame as being a behavioral management technique.
Yep.
Keeps them quiet, keeps the kids behaving when we shame them into silence. And it's so toxic. And Pine really helps with that. I would really recommend, if that's an issue that you're working with and engaging with, give Pine a try.
Absolutely. Shame is so embedded in family dynamics. So I like what you're saying with women in society as well, that guilt and shame. It's amazing how much of it we just carry without even realizing it. So do you feel like Pine helps balance with women with a more masculine sort of confidence in that regard?
I'm thinking that it's interesting, because if you're thinking about Pine as being a more masculine energy, I think that any essence has a huge scope in which it can work. They can each do so much more than the little description that you might read or find in a booklet. So I do think that it can connect to that masculine part of you and help it come into harmony. Is that what you're thinking? Is that what the...
Yeah. I was thinking that, and that it may, in addition, help with relationships with the father, because, a lot of the that feeling of not being good enough sometimes in families comes from the criticism of not just the father, but that can happen a lot. So yeah, I do agree that that's where I go with thinking about Pine is more than just the little description, right? I feel like there's so much more to it that we could explore with its energy.
There's so much more to every essence.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're talking about that father figure aspect and challenges with the father, there's a couple essences that I absolutely go to. Baby Blue Eyes by the Flower Essence Society is kind of the classic archetypal father trouble essence. So anytime there's been a distortion in that relationship, distortion in that experience, whether it was from a harsh, unloving father, or a father who was abusive, or just wasn't a good father in a lot of ways, Baby Blue Eyes can help to heal your relationship to the masculine archetype, and heal, whether it involves the actual human that was your father or not. It helps heal that situation within you on a really deep level. It's a really big essence, and if you have some real challenges with your father, start taking it some time before you go and actually encounter that person in person, because it can bring up a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm. And sunflower, with that yellow big flower, we've talked about sunflower in the confidence episode, and that third chakra of will and your self-esteem, but because it has that father energy, that it helps with the poor relationship with the father, especially when there's low self-esteem, or the converse is true with an overly inflated ego.
Because those are just two sides of the same coin, right?
Yeah. imbalance in that third chakra.
Yeah. I think of sunflower, especially with clients who've had an overshadowing, overbearing father, where they never were allowed to see the sunlight because dad was always sort of stomping them right back down. When they started to show themselves, they started to bloom and grow. And it's not unusual that the father was so insecure that he felt threatened by the kids or a particular child. And in that case, sunflower can be very helpful to find your way to a strong backbone and stand up for yourself and to shine in your own radiance rather than constantly checking yourself because you're always feeling like somebody's going to come and step on you. I think saguaro cactus is also a really important element to talking about this issue of authority, because a lot of times the male is the authority, not always, of course, but it can certainly be the case that the authority figure relationship gets distorted. And saguaro cactus, and I tend to use the one from Desert Alchemy a lot. Flower Essence Society also has one in their Range of Light series. But I just, the saguaro is the tallest, the biggest presence in that high desert ecology. And they're just so strong in themselves and so grounded and rooted and yet really elevated also. There's a real verticality to saguaros if you can think of the images from cartoons. If you've actually seen a saguaro, of course you have an image in your head. But it really knows who it is, and it's not afraid to stand up. And saguaro is such a helpful essence for so many people when you're struggling with, who you are and who you are in relationship to authority, and whether that relationship is you being rebellious or causing trouble, or whether it's you completely bowing over to whatever the authority might be. Either way, saguaro can be really helpful.
That's neat. I actually have not worked with saguaro before, and I'm really excited to learn more about Desert Alchemy's essences in a workshop coming up that I know you're going to be in as well.
Absolutely. Never miss a chance to get more education. It's so wonderful. And Cynthia Athena Kemp-Shearer is such a great teacher. So anybody listening who wants to learn more about these beautiful desert essences, please do that. It's wonderful stuff. I love those essences.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about the father relationship. What about the mother relationship?
Agreed. Is there a particular starting point, or do you want me to dive in on that?
Well, what if we start with pineapple weed?
Beautiful.
I mean, I just love, it's in the chamomile family, and I just love the name of it, Matricaria matricarioides. Tell me if I'm butchering it.
Botanical Latin.
I know.
I think that the most important thing to remember is you're communicating, and if people understand what you're saying, that's enough. There really isn't a strict setting of how to pronounce things. It's a translation of a dead language, so nobody really knows how to say it, but there are certain kind of conventions that people use. So I would probably say matricarioides.
Matricarioides. There you go.
But I could also be wrong.
Right. And then to top it off, I believe that species name has been updated in recent years to Discoidia.
Fortunately, all you need to do is go find pineapple weed from the Alaskan essences and you'll be set.
But I guess where I was going with that is the Matricaria, which is the same genus as chamomile. I mean, it comes from the Latin root matriarch, which is so interesting. And it's just been known as something to promote harmony between mothers and children, or with humans and nature. It's so lovely that it also brings in the nature connection. There's a couple ways I could go with this, but I'm just thinking, if you're not familiar with pineapple weed or that name of it, it's a rayless or petalless chamomile type flower, also called wild chamomile, and it it is naturalized all over the United States and I believe Europe. I believe it originally might have come from Asia. But it grows in disturbed places, and you've probably walked on it. It always grows up in gravel driveways. So wherever you've lived, if you've walked along a gravel driveway, you have probably stepped on pineapple weed. And it's one of those fun plants that I remember as a kid. I don't know, in grade school, some young grade school friends, we'd pick it, and somebody told me if you close your eyes and put it in your mouth, it'll taste like a strawberry. So thank goodness this wasn't a poisonous plant, because we all did it, and we're like, ooh. Now imagine it was like, close your eyes, imagine it as a strawberry, and it'll be a strawberry in your mouth. So isn't that funny?
Kids.
I know. I don't know if that's a local to this area or more widespread, but
that's really sweet though, because kids are the ones who tend to notice that plant.
Yeah.
Adults just walk right past it and walk right over it. And it's one that I only ever recognized after it was brought to my attention in the Essence framework. After that, I see it all over the place now.
Right, and it's low to the ground. Kids are low to the ground. We play on the ground, and it's just right there at our feet, helping us to do what? Connect to nature. And I love the magical sort of aspect of it that I encountered as a child, not knowing anything about plants really, but just thinking how sort of mystical that was. And then as an essence, it's great for kind of engendering those childlike qualities for people.
It has a real gentleness to it that I think helps with that wounded child feeling, and a lot of that can come up in that mother-child relationship. So the bringing pineapple weed into your experience could be really, really healing and beneficial whenever you're feeling that maybe being walked on. Not, the bumps and bruises of childhood, let's say. I think pineapple weed is really, really beneficial for. I couldn't not talk about Mariposa lily as well, because that's one of the really primary mother archetype flower essences. And that one is, I most often use it from the Flower Essence Society. And there's a few different Mariposa lilies that they have in their line. But the basic Mariposa lily really speaks to that kind of wounded mother experience whenever you've really need help in connecting to your inner mother even. Our human mothers can be flawed, and they're always going to be human. But connecting to that archetype of mother can help you feel more secure and safe and loved, even as you interact with your human mother who might have an issue or two.
The Mariposa lily, in fact, a lot of the lilies are just lovely with working with the feminine archetypes, I think, especially of the self.
The whole female ability to give birth and bring a child into the world and nurture a child, that quality of lily is definitely a very yin quality. If you think about the signatures of lilies, they have these bulbs, they have these kind of moist, nourishing bulbs through which they can draw back all that energy back into the ground in the wintertime and then grow and flower in the summer. But you're right, all of those lilies have different segments or different aspects of the feminine experience for sure, and certainly the mother experience as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about sibling relationships? And I really think the inner child could use some love during the holidays.
Yeah, I was just thinking that myself, especially since we were talking about pineapple weed and then there's chamomile. It's its own sibling in that genus. Chamomile works with kind of soothing your inner child, especially in all sorts of areas where you may be giving into being whiny and complaining and angry, especially with these family scenarios, demanding attention, that kind of thing. Chamomile herbally is used to calm the nervous system, but also all the tension in the stomach area. And so I think that, again, is in there in that third chakra that deals with your sense of self and your inner child. Like if I were to think of where does my inner child live in my body, it's there in my belly, basically. And that seems to be a really great fit for that. What do you think about chamomile?
Every time I think about chamomile, I can't forget Matthew Wood's quote about it being helpful for whiny babies of all ages.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I believe that's from his book, The Book of Herbal Wisdom. Yeah.
He's got a lot of interesting things to share. He's a wonderful herbalist. He works with flower essences and homeopathy, and he's a great teacher. I've had the fortune of taking a class or two from him. It's really fun to learn from people with all these different types of knowledge and understanding about plants and plant medicines.
Yeah, and he also heavily relies on homeopathy to inform the uses of plants, not just traditional Western herbalism. So it's a really great melding of just information about the wisdom that's coming from these plants. And we like to talk about that here on this podcast, really, the wisdom, what the flowers and the plants are teaching us. So it's a good resource.
And how the healing reflects in different lenses. A homeopathic is different than a flower essence, is different than a tincture, but they all have a certain realm in which they work. It's really interesting to connect with somebody like Matthew Wood who can see it from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, and homeopathy is a great source of information as well for flower essence uses, because Samuel Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, came up with a way of testing or provings in order to determine what these formulas, remedies, the homeopathic remedies were good for. And the way to test that was to take excessive amounts of the actual mother tincture of it or the herbs. So we think of chamomile, for example, as this very gentle herbal remedy when you drink the tea or what have you. But if you take excessive amounts of it, it can cause, as any plant, adverse reactions. And they noticed things like, liver heat and red face and getting angry and agitated and being petulant, and all of these qualities that we would look to soothe with a flower essence or a homeopathic remedy. So that proving it's like the opposite of what we're looking for.
Yeah, and it's part of that spectrum, right? The plant can teach us the balance between these places and can show what happens when you're out of balance, as well as how you can find balance. The child issue, I think that chamomile is always a good place to start. And then there's these two different essences that speak to these imbalances in the relationship dynamics. I think heather and chicory are two that I think of a lot. And I'll throw another segment here, because one of the things that I counsel my clients in, if they're struggling with a relationship dynamic with their parent or with a spouse or whoever, sometimes a really good way of seeing into it is to take the essence that person might need. Take it yourself. I've often done this with parents, with children, and talking about their parents when the parent isn't working with me, nor do they have any intention of taking essences, but offering the same essence that if we're talking about what the parent's issues might be and thinking, oh, that's the perfect chicory situation, giving that to my client, to the child, can really create an awareness sometimes and an opening in that relationship where you might not have another opportunity to open into that healing space, because you can see it much better because you're seeing much more through the parent's eyes.
Yeah, chicory is one that I've learned as well. That is really works well when both the parent and the child take it.
Yeah, but you can't always do that.
You can't always do that.
Sometimes just taking it yourself can create a similar kind of change, because, you know, it's that old saw, right? You can't change anybody else until you change yourself first. Well, no, you can't change anybody else at all, really, but all you can do is change yourself. That's what I was trying to say.
And it would be unethical to dose them without their permission.
Yes, please don't do that. Oh. That question does come up a lot, doesn't it? Do you have people asking you, is it okay to do that? Mm-hmm. No, please don't do that. Mm-hmm. It's not right. If it's a child or a pet, sure, because they are sort of under your wing, under your energetic wing. But to inadvertently or with unwittingly dose an adult is really inappropriate and can cause distress to them because they don't know what's happening. You wouldn't want to do that. Take it yourself if you really need to do that. But the chicory is that imbalance in that giving and receiving. And so anytime you have that, chicory was described as the needy mother symptom. And then there's heather, which is the needy child part of that. Mm-hmm. So I think chicory and heather have a lot of overlap, and sometimes it's not really clear which one is the best fit. But if you're relating more to that child part, then probably the heather would be the better choice.
And chicory is such a beautiful shade of blue, that flower. It's got such a calming influence. And it's funny, though, because the root used in coffee or a coffee substitute has that really bitter, strong flavor that takes a little getting used to if you haven't tasted it in a coffee substitute beverage or any other kind of flavor like that. I love it, though. It's very good in the morning.
Yeah, bitter is a flavor that's not in the typical American palate, but I love bitter too.
Yeah.
We can't not have a conversation about working with the child without talking a little bit about some gems that are so helpful for children.
Yeah.
Rose quartz. I mean, that is so soothing to the heart whenever your heart is feeling hurt or you're feeling neglected and abandoned or all of those things that little inner child needs support with. I think rose quartz is incredibly helpful. I think that you have a lot of experience with rose quartz, don't you?
Yeah, I just love that gemstone, the pink quartz. It's beautiful, and it is so helpful in any situation that you want to engender self-love or the feeling of being nurtured. And that really speaks to when you want to nurture your own inner child. Really, we're our own parents, and we have to be our own parents. So to give that to ourselves, it's a gift of love that we're not just we're giving to ourselves, but we're also giving to, how would I say that, all aspects of ourselves, including our inner child. So we can connect and really feel that stabilization in our heart when we use rose quartz.
Yeah. And I think calling all angels is another one that I think about for soothing the child part. It's a beautiful combination formula from the Alaskan essences, and it's just it really kind of covers a lot of bases when you have an upset child part. And it's a wonderful, they make it in the drop formulation. They also make a beautiful spray as well. That might be a really nice possibility. So if you're traveling, to have one of those sprays with you to support yourself as you go to sleep, to support yourself whenever you're dealing with these family dynamics that don't feel supportive.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites. And the spray has a really lovely essential oil scent as well. But the angelica in it specifically, I mean, you could use angelica on its own. But I really like to think of it as we're talking about, kind of parenting ourselves or feeling like we're being nurtured or watched over or cared for. And this just expands that to come for that energy to come from a greater than just you, the angelic realm basically, and the connection to that kingdom. And so wonderful for feeling, especially during the holidays, if you're feeling really like alone or not understood, or just, I really like it when there's that feeling of feeling alone in whatever you're going through, whether it's being actually alone and not being able to be with family, or you're with family and you just don't think they understand you and you feel alone. Either way, that calling all angels just adds that extra support from the other world, gives you that feeling of being boosted and cared for.
Exactly. It's when we get into these holidays, we can feel so disappointed. Our hopes for connecting with our family members or connecting over this idyllic holiday. All of us have these images in our mind from TV and from cultural images of how perfect things are supposed to be. And then you get tossed back in with, oh yes, my family. And it maybe isn't going to act like that. Maybe things are going to happen that don't feel really good and warm and cozy. And you can create these resources within yourself by taking some of these essences or having some of these supportive formulas like calling all angels with you to help smooth it out. And you can start to see, okay, yes, they're flawed and they're human, but we can find a place in ourselves that we can appreciate, both ourselves and the people that we're related to and spending time with. I think that might be a good thought to take with us as we travel for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you can't not go wrong having that one on you, along with the rescue remedy or the 5-flower formula. And
all of the above.
Right. And one of the ways I love having the rescue remedy with me when I'm in other situations is those little gummy candies that they make. Because you can just pop those all day long and it's just like putting a mint in your mouth.
Right. Yes, they're coming in some nice flavors now and some different options, which is kind of cool that they've expanded the line. It's always useful.
Yeah. Right. And then speaking of being in tricky family situations, and sometimes it gets intense, especially when there may be arguments happening with other family members. And one way I like to just sort of keep my boundaries when witnessing that and not getting caught up in it is hematite. Just stay grounded and pull those boundaries around me, not get sucked into kind of a codependent scenario with other people.
I think that's really appropriate because we do tend to get caught up in the drama. The buttons are getting triggered. We're tired. We're maybe in a situation that's not our comfort zone. And having hematite can really help to keep your boundaries strong. I like that idea a lot. That's not necessarily one that I would have thought of, but I think that's just perfect. Yeah, beautiful. So I think we can probably kind of bring this together now. I think that a lot of us are challenged in family relationships. We do so much internal work and self-growth and processing, and then it's almost like having a stress test when you have a holiday come up and you start to realize, oh, I'm still working on this little process here. I thought I was almost done, but maybe not yet. And having some of these essences can really help you come together with recognizing where you're still growing and give you some support for those things that you know are going to be triggering.
And we'll have more episodes similar to this topic around the holidays and dealing with seasonal issues with the winter time, the stress and exhaustion that comes along with holiday planning and traveling, and how to protect yourself during travels.
Yeah. So we welcome you to engage with us. We'd love to hear from you about what your thoughts are on this this topic and maybe some areas that you're looking for more support. We'd love to help answer your questions. And if you have particular concerns or topics that you'd like to bring up, we would love to hear about that and be able to address that on a further show. We're really glad that you're with us. We're really glad to have this community. We really love to share these messages from nature.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really appreciate the feedback we're getting and love doing this. So keep it coming. And exactly what Kathleen said, let us know what you want us to talk about, or tell us what you like to use in these situations. We love having this conversation.
Beautiful. Until next time, Ro.
Bye-bye now. You've been listening to the Flower Essence Podcast with Rokanna Feld and Kathleen Aspens, and we appreciate your interest in connecting with nature on a deeper level. You can find us online at thefloweressencepodcast.com or join us on Facebook and continue the discussion.
This podcast is meant for educational and entertainment purposes only. We are not physicians and do not diagnose, prescribe, or treat medical conditions. Please consult with your own physician or healthcare practitioner regarding the suggestions and recommendations made by the hosts and guests of the Flower Essence Podcast.